Welcome back to the Valley Peak Nutrition Podcast. We are covering a topic this week that really has absolutely nothing to do with the mountains, really has nothing to do with performance nutrition, really has nothing to do with any kind of nutrition except for, um, I guess it's not true. It is, but it's a very, very requested topic. And we've had a lot of questions on it, so it is worth coverings, and it is about your kids and health habits. And so, not only have we had people write in wanting to know more specifically about 6 questions they asked, and I guess, made a comment at one point that this was a topic that we were going to cover because we've been getting some questions about it. And since then, many, many people have been saying, "Hey, when is that? Hey, where is that? Hey, when are you going to do that?" So the answer is it's here. We're doing it now by popular demand, and by extra popular demand, I am joined by the one and the only Lindsay Camp to talk about this. So this should be very interesting considering we have created and fed two small humans to get the perspective of a mom as well. So, without further ado, here is question number one.
I feel like no bit of me deserves to be talking about this because all the things I said that I would do and because I'm mom when it comes to food are just blown way out of the water. But anyway, this person wants to know, what recommendations do you have in trying to talk to kids about food? I have a teenager who seems to be in love with food and craves sugar. My wife says I shouldn't worry about it. What are your thoughts?
So, before I give mine, I would be really curious to know what your answer is here.
I feel like it's tricky because one is just how to talk to kids about food, and the other is specifically about whether we should worry about kids that seem to have a sweet tooth. So, what recommendations for kids for talking to kids about food? I think this was even before having kids, and I think I've noticed it since having them. We've stayed consistent, largely in part to you saying this is important. Not saying we hit the nail on the head all the time, but I feel like the people I've seen do this when we've done this, the people that have the most, I guess, comfortable conversations about food and what I would deem as like healthy conversations about food are ones who don't set, I don't know if ultimatums is the right word. What's that called when you're like, this is bad, this is good? Is that ultimatum? Anyway, whatever that is called. They don't do that. So foods aren't from the devil or something like that. I think they aren't scared of certain food or scared of certain ingredients. I know there's concern with certain foods and ingredients. I'm not saying that, but um yeah, they don't let that drive their choices, I guess. And most people, even I remember being a nanny and a babysitter, and I would hear one of the moms I babysat for say, "Oh, well, let's get some protein so you feel like your muscles are getting stronger. Or let's that's a whole lot of carbs. Let's mix some, protein." She would say protein a lot, but protein in there or something like that. So talking about balanced food rather than food being all good or all bad, like having a balance of what they're eating, I guess, is helpful.
Yeah, no, I think that's a good answer. So, here is what my answer is. The Both the interesting thing and the hard thing about this question is that the answer is the hardest thing to do. Maybe kids could care less what you tell them, but they will watch everything you do. So, number one, the absolute best thing that you can do is if you have an image in your mind and in your head of what good nutrition is, and if you have an image in a mind, in a if you have an image in your own mind that when you go to their house when they are 30, what their refrigerator looks like, what their nutrition habits look like, that needs to be yours. You can tell them all day long what they should do. You can buy them the type of foods that they need to be eating. But if you are not doing that and setting the example, they will not do it. And I will so we have two boys, and obviously they're both really young, so it's too early to really tell. But you can already see that one is very rule following, law abiding, wants to do the right thing, and certainly mirrors that in his nutrition. He tries not to overdo sweets, and if you tell him, like, if you say, "I don't think we're gonna do another one because we just had one," like, "No, we're not gonna get 3 donuts, you just had 1," he's okay with that. The other will riot, rant, rave, and go on an absolute, like, strike until you give him 3 donuts, and he will I mean, we have literally seen him go days without, you know, taking a few bites until he can binge on pizza at youth group, and then he'll go, like, another several days, and my point in saying that is, you could even model it, and it still is really, 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 really difficult, but that is what I would say is one of the number one things. Now, I think as a part of that, like, you are leading them, right, in this fashion. Talk to them about what you're making and why. Well, why can't I just have pancakes for breakfast? Why do I have to have eggs too? Well, you need a little bit of protein because that'll help you be, strong and fast with your friends. Oh yeah, that sounds good. Like, I want to be able to beat Johnny on the playground. They're into stuff like that. But don't talk to them about how it's just healthier. They could care less. They're young. The last thing they care about is their cardiovascular disease and their LDL profile. They only want things that matter to them. But I would, and I do encourage, people to talk to them about those different things. Number 3, and this probably would seem obvious, but, you know, set them up for success by making sure there's good stuff in the house. Buy nuts, buy jerky, buy pieces of fruit, buy cheese sticks. Those things are every bit as convenient as those little packaged bars in the, opaque and matte finished packages at the grocery store labeled organic and really just a glorified candy bar. Buy them stuff and say, look, there's a bin in the fridge. There's a bin in the cupboard. If you want something out of there, choose an option from the protein bin and choose an option from the fun bin or the produce bin or whatever. My point is though that you are putting the puzzle pieces there, um, that lead them to having success. Now, your wife says you shouldn't worry about it because you have a kid who seems to be in love with food and crave sugar. Here's what I wouldn't do, because we have one that is like this too, and he's 4. I would not talk about how bad foods are. I would not tell him how unhealthy they are. I would not, um, I would not assign all of these negative connotations. I would invest more time on trying to emphasize what's good and what's positive rather than, trying to emphasize the negative, I guess.
I think what keeps popping up in my mind as we're saying all the reasons to present food this way and to discuss it this way is, I mean, obviously, whoever asked this question and many of people listening, good nutrition and good health is a family value of theirs. And I think about all the other things, values of ours that we instill in our kids, right? Like, it's something we talk about, it's something you offer to have them ask you questions about, you follow up with it. It's not just one conversation. And like you said, if you practice what you preach, like, if you want your child to be a good neighbor, you need to be a good neighbor. If you want your child to work hard, they should see you working hard. If you want them to manage their finances well, are they seeing you, having a budget or something like that? And I know that's all age appropriate. There's different ways to present it, but I'd say that, like, make sure your values are in line with what you want theirs to be and go from there.
Yeah, I mean, I don't. The fact that you're even asking this tells me that you probably care about your own nutrition in some way, shape, or form. And that's, like, that's number one. But I learned a lot of this working with peds in the hospital. We would get pediatricians send kids over generally because they measured above the plot line for weight in the given age. Their obesity risk was really, really high. And, the parents obviously would come with them. And so you get into these meetings and you get into conversations about, like, their perspective on what's going on. And it was almost always the parents' idea and perception was that this child should be on a plan, right? And they had no real interest in making change in their life. The parent didn't. Whether it was right or wrong, I would in every meeting say, there is no way that's going to work. If you want If you are genuinely worried about what his doctor is saying about him and his future, you need to go for a walk with him. You need to, participate in less to make the time to cook at home. You need to start learning to cook. This is a kid. If you want him to follow this path and you want him to reduce his risk of having a lot of problems when he's older, guess who gets to lead the way? It's you. And that is how I think that I don't think you talk about it with a kid. I think you exemplify it, and he or she may or may not follow suit when they get on their own, but I will tell you that the likelihood they do is way higher if they have a good example than if they have none at all.
And kind of piggybacking off of that, part of that question was a concern about a teenager who craved food and sugar. The next question says, how do you talk about food with your kids if they're always craving junk food or fast food without telling them that it's bad or unhealthy? So, what we just said, and how to have a balanced perspective. So, I think we answered a fair amount of that, but I think it's something that I didn't realize, and I'm sure this would be true for kids, but I didn't realize it as an adult. I'd be like, "Why just" I'd ask you, I'd be like, "Why just, like that food, and it just tastes good, and I'm hungry, and I'm craving the sugar," and you're like, "Exactly. You're hungry. You're craving food," and realize that to say, "Oh, I'm craving all these sugary things," I was hungry. Of course, that's gonna sound better than an apple, but when I am craving all the sugar, it's not after I've had a nice Thanksgiving meal, do I want a Snickers bar. I wanted that when I was on the verge of having lunch, maybe hadn't eaten enough already and was just starving. It wasn't the sugar I craved as much as just food, and of course, who's not gonna crave something that tastes good? So, I think that the craving is normal, maybe helping them identify that they are in fact hungry would be a better idea.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect answer. And this topic, this question can be broadly cast to all of us. And that is like if you want to put yourself in a position to reduce cravings and you have any kind of a nutrition goal and you just find like the quote food noise is really loud, it is something is wrong with your daily intake that's leading to that. If you follow a good nutrition structure and like we actually have a podcast topic about this that we're going to cover. There's about 5 different things that if you're checking the boxes on those 5 different things, the likelihood that you're going to be feeling really hungry throughout the course of the day and or having these massive cravings reduces significantly. And so tying this into kids, if you've got a kid who's craving junk food and fast food all of the time, how do you deal with it without being overly bearing and giving them a negative perspective on it? Number 1 will take care of that. If you are teaching them about good nutrition, providing that, and you are leading the way and they are following suit, they're very unlikely to have these to significant degree, assuming they're eating at home. And there is a an old theory that we were taught in college, and it still is really effective. It's called the division of responsibility. And the division of responsibility breaks down the role of a parent's job in feeding and then a kid's job in feeding. And like most people listening to this, you just have dinner. Like I didn't know there were roles in feeding, but don't overcomplicate it because it basically says this. Your job as a parent is to provide food for the kid. So you get to choose what's going to be there. You get to choose when dinner is going to be. You get to choose some of those parameters. The kid gets the choice as to whether or not he or she's going to eat it. But we're not short ordering cook, like we're not like cooking 6 meals to satisfy everybody's taste buds. This is dinner. If you want it, here it is. There's not an alternative of what are those little yogurt chocolate balls? Those little yogurt balls he likes. Yeah, those little yogi. No, you can't eat 6 bags of yogis later and a bag of popcorn. If you're hungry later, guess what's going to be waiting on you? Dinner. So I think like if you're following some of that basic structure, you're putting a child in position to have good nutrition and to reduce his or her call them issues related to nutrition because you're setting them up for success. So yeah, I think you nailed it by saying the cravings will likely take care of themselves when you are feeding yourself adequately. Number 3.
I have a younger son who is showing some interest in getting stronger, and I would love to instill that in him early on. What recommendations do you have for training with kids?
Why are you laughing?
Okay. I recently started doing some of this in the garage. And the first day, the boys came out and they were just pumped to like see me moving, I guess. But they would come out there and it's kind of like cooking with kids where you think, oh, I want my kids to learn the value of cooking for themselves. No one really enjoys it, right? They're in the way, they're cutting the wrong thing or pounding something on the counter or spilling everything. Like it's not convenient and easy. And even though you like to say it's fun, it's not really fun to cook with children around. And that's how I felt a bit about the working out. Like they're in the way and it's like, I need to use the yoga mat to do a push up or something. And they're, I don't know, doing somersaults on it. So they're in the way. But I feel like with cooking, like with fixing part of a car, like with working out, if you let them be there, I think that's key. You let them be there, you let them see that it's a family value, that we're all doing this together. Maybe not every time, but you give them something to do. I think my parents were really good at this. Like, I always wanted my hands in it, knowing I would mess it up. They gave me a way to still do that. So whether that's, "Here, these weights are for you," or, "Here, try this jump rope while I'm over here doing these push-ups," or something, like, just letting them be part of it, maybe, is what I would recommend.
I would say that that's true, and I would add to that, do not think you are getting in a productive workout if you are inviting them to work out, right? I mean, now I think it depends on the age too. If we have really young kids, you're not getting a productive workout in. It's 100% about them. It's like fishing or hunting. You're not actually going out to fill your tag. You are going out to take your kids to the woods, be really, really loud, see absolutely nothing, eat a bunch of snacks, and come home. You're investing for the future. It is what it is. Now, if you have an older teenager, then yeah, absolutely. That still could be a really productive time. So I'll answer this in kind of like age appropriate ways in my experience, but they all have one foundation. If they're younger, like our boys are 4 and 7, even on up to, let's say, like 9 and 10, just make it fun, right? Have like Grant likes to do pull-up contests or push-up contests, or they like to take the barbell and throw it over the top of their head, or a dumbbell and throw it over the top of their head. And really part of that is like they're just getting exposure to equipment. And I think that that's part of it too, but I would make it fun, have races, set up a circuit to where you guys you compete with them to do 5 push-ups, 2 pull-ups, and then you run a lap around the house. Who can do that the fastest? But just, getting them involved in some way, shape, or form. As they get older, I think you foster that desire by them by the same way we talked about nutrition in that and really anything. If they express an interest in playing the drums, you get them drum lessons. If they express an interest in playing football, take them to a local college football game and, take them to sign up to get football, take them to get the stuff that they need for it. So if they're a little bit older, then yeah, I think you equip them the best that you can if they're showing interest in it. But this is the foundational point. Whether they're 4 and 7 or they're older, those like I'll use our boys as an example, they care about it because they see us doing it. They have no clue the cardiovascular benefit or the muscle endurance and zone 2. We don't tell them any of that because they could care less. They simply like doing what we do. They like seeing what we see. Or I'm sorry, they like doing what we do and they like seeing what we do as well. And so they just want to be involved. And I think that it's like anything music that we like now, but maybe aren't proud of from the 80s. There's a lot of music that really sucks, but we love because we listened to it with our parents. And again, I think that with both of these topics, be it quote exercise slash training and nutrition, you are really just exposing them to different habits that they are going to be so much more likely to take up in the future than if they had no exposure to it at all. And so I think that you make it fun. I think that you exemplify it. And then yes, as they get older, you start to get more into it, and whatever that means for them, you help put them in the best position possible to go do it. And I do this kind of with you. Depending on their age, like you might say, "Hey, do you notice that you're getting stronger? Do you notice that it's getting easier? Do you notice that it's running, you're able to run faster? Do you call out some of those things for them?" There's someone in Valley to Peak right now. He is a teenager and he is crushing it. And his motivation is simply that he wants to play on the varsity squad. So to him, and one thing that we constantly work on and refocus him on is these little things you're doing every day with your nutrition, these little things that you're doing every day with your training, and they all seem kind of annoying. Don't see them as health or don't see them as nutrition. See those as what your ticket is onto the varsity field because that's all he cares about. That's all he cares about. And he wants that so bad that he is willing to do these little things. And it's for kids and for teenagers, there is something like so for our 7-year-olds, I mean, everything is a foot race from like getting in the Walmart doors to getting to the truck to getting up the stair. Everything is a race. And so for him, it's like, "Hey, let's race. Do you notice that you're getting faster?" Because he loves racing and beating his buddies. But for all of our kids, all of our teenagers are going to have something that they care about. And I would focus in on that part of it as a source of encouragement to, just have them encourage them to continue on. I'll say this too, and I'll link this in the show notes. But Andy Galpin, he did a really good job answering this question on a podcast that he had, and he kind of broke it down by age brackets. I don't remember everything that he said, but I will link that, and you guys can listen to that if you want to dive in more about the exercise habit side of things. Fourth question. This is really one long question, but all of them, all three is like one. Yeah.
All right. To start, with rising grocery prices, how do we maximize the nutrient dense foods on a budget? Especially with growing boys, we want to prioritize high quality proteins and nutrient dense foods like fruits and vegetables. Isn't that the truth? Oh, you want me to keep reading? Oh, I could go off on this for a long time. Okay. Okay. I feel like, I mean, I don't know if this is a surprise or not. You're more of the grocery like organizer. Like we all go and it's a whole show, but you're like, we need to get this if we're gonna cook this. This is the ingredients we need, whatnot. And I remember like over the course of a few weeks, maybe a couple months, where we clearly noticed like, gosh, that bill is really high. And we do not buy fancy food. Like obviously we buy and we make most all of our food, but I mean, we would shop at Winco, which inexpensive, inexpensive to go there. We didn't buy all the name brand stuff, so I remember us being shocked when we realized that the prices went so high. Um, I feel like you could speak a little to this and maybe you wanna wait, but in that often someone's reason for buying a lot of processed foods or not a lot of fresh fruits and vegetables, they say, "Oh, it's just so expensive. It's just so expensive." But when I've looked at the cost of eating out, even with 2 little kids, or buying some of the things that I know those people are buying, I feel like it's a lot more.
It is a lot more. Now, to spin off of that to say that it's a lot more, there is one really, really, really important piece to factor into that, and that is our portion sizes. Right. So like let's use the jumbo pack of chicken breasts, which is generally used to be $1.99 per pound. Now it's like it was 2.27 per pound. Now you're pushing like 2.52 per pound on average at any grocery store. Each one of those breasts is somewhere between 8 to 12 ounces. And based on the work that we do with people, I know most families, each person in the household is consuming one of those. That is roughly 90 grams of protein, which is nearly 100% of some people's daily value. So when you talk about grocery prices and things being so expensive, and this actually loops into the third part of his question. So here's the third part of this. He says, another question that I have is there a guideline to how many eggs, meats, fruits, veggies we need per person based on their body parameters? And if they're still hungry after that, what should they go grab? A bagel? At some point, we are just wasting money overfeeding nutrient dense foods because our bodies can't absorb more than one sitting. Is that actually true? So, to his point, if you're eating larger portions than is needed in a given day, of course it's going to be more expensive. Now, I don't want to act like a a budgeting um approach should be a diet of some kind. Like that's a great way to lose weight is you just eat smaller portions to save yourself money. So yes, if we choose to eat at home, if we choose to make most of those foods, and if we are eating portions that we actually need, then yes, it is much less expensive. To his point, does your body ever stop absorbing the nutrients? It's a yes and no answer. And here's where you're sort of splitting hairs. No, it does not stop absorbing nutrients if you're talking about carbohydrates, proteins, fats, and then calories. Because what happens is once you hit that threshold of what your personal needs are, it begins to store the excess. And it stores the excess, of course, in body fat. So it does not, there is no threshold there. There is no cap, unfortunately, because once you overconsume that cap, it puts it into long-term storage, which is going to be your body fat. Can you overconsume nutrients like vitamins and minerals? You certainly can. And so at some point, if the only reason you are eating is to get those nutrients, at some point you are now eating for no reason at all because you've reached that threshold. So, in theory, anything beyond that threshold, any one blueberry beyond that threshold to get those nutrients in is no longer being absorbed because there are saturation points for a lot of those nutrients. And once they're reached, you actually pee excess out. So, in his question, yeah, I suppose that a good budgeting tool would be to figure out what your personal needs are, make sure that your food portions are dosed accordingly, and I can guarantee you, you will spend less because it will, of course, be less food.
You said that you can't overabsorb some, but you can others, or did I misunderstand?
You can over absorb calories, right? I mean, that is what accumulates body fat. Let's take vitamin C, for example. At some point, you will no longer absorb more vitamin C because the saturation point has been hit. Anything beyond that point, you are just peeing out.
I think another thing that I think about, and moms get talking about what costs a lot and budgeting and whatnot in groceries, is that I don't know, there's all these memes out there about fruit and how my kid doesn't eat anything, but then we blow like $100 on blueberries or raspberries or whatever. I think we all know the foods that are more expensive, the foods that our specific families like that are more expensive. And I think looking at what are they consuming most, is that an expensive thing? So what it takes to get full. Like, I think about a bowl of oatmeal. Oatmeal is cheap, right? Like, how much for one of those cylinder things? 3.50. Okay. And our kids get like filled to the max. When we put stuff in, right? We put peanut butter in there, we put bananas, raisins, whatever. So they get filled up. It's nutritious. They like it. They're full for a long time and it lasts with them. They don't need a whole bunch of other food to go with it. But, and I say this because we also have these, thanks to my mom. Uh, but if they eat 8, 10, 12 packs of yogis instead of sitting down for a small bowl of oatmeal for a meal, that's expensive. I mean, it'd be interesting to do like price to price on that comparison to see your kids might be eating a lot of money. Yeah, not money, you know what I mean? Like stuff that cost adds up to a lot of money, but are they eating things that actually fill them? I think that's where some of the budgeting could, I don't know this person, but could potentially be looked at. 'Cause it's like, you might have it in your pantry, but is that what's being eaten? The expensive stuff or the cheaper stuff?
Yeah, and I think too, maximizing nutrient dense foods on a budget, there's obviously a lot of the old adages still fit, like, as far as buying generic. We actually just came back from the grocery not long ago, and there were 2 bags of shredded cheese. One was name brand, one was the store brand. The store brand was $1.77 for the exact same size as the name brand, which was $4.77. So, you're saving $3 on an item that is identical, and so I will throw this in there as a part of this whole budgeting conversation. Do not fall prey to the ads that all your food is toxic and poisonous because it's store brand, not name brand, comes in a glossy package instead of a matte finish package, is or isn't organic, is or isn't have all these flashy starburst labels on the outside that say they're non-GMO, non this, that, and the other. 90% of that is marketing and you are paying for. So if you want to improve your budget, do not fall prey to that stuff and continue to listen to the podcast and learn about good nutrition because that will save you quite a bit on your grocery budget alone. So hopefully we answered the heart of that question, but yeah, I think there are a lot of things that could be done there to save some money on the grocery bill.
One more thing that I think has come in handy, and I think we developed this when we were first becoming parents, like literally becoming parents. Like your mom said, I'll go and buy your groceries. And so we came up with this master list of what we buy every single week. And not everyone has to get this detailed, but I think something that has saved us over time is having staples, like not trying to think of something new every single week. So having those consistent things, that way food's not going to waste too. Like we're not getting a bunch of things that we don't eat and it's just like sitting in this pantry and or in your cupboards. Like the foods that we get, sometimes we find we go through it like too quickly if we're not careful. But having staples that are going to be eaten by most everyone in the family and getting those every week, I think that saves money too because we know we'll use it.
That's good. All right, so I'm gonna ask this question. How do you two navigate nutrition? You've said, and Lindsay has admitted to not caring, but you do. How do you get a spouse on board or supportive?
I'm curious what you would say.
Well, I'm not going to answer it yet, but you answer however you want.
Whoever asked this, I feel like probably knows who I am and is just trying to get to the nitty-gritty details. Believe it or not, when people ask about like, "Oh, what was your toughest part of marriage or was your first year hard?" I said, believe it or not, one of the most difficult parts of being married is when it came to food and nutrition. I don't know if anyone else can relate to that, but, um, when we first met and we're spending a lot of time together and even first married, we navigated nutrition by you cooking, and I would eat it, and thank you for it, and then I would drive home because I'd always, like, come to your apartment, and you'd make me dinner, and then and it was, like, plated and portioned. There was never leftovers, like, it was the amount that we were going to have, and we'd eat on that little coffee table, and then every single night between 9:30 or 10, I would drive down the hill, and I would stop at McDonald's, and I would get 2 McChickens because I was so hungry, and didn't wanna tell you. So, it was very uncomfortable, and I think I'm guessing whoever asked this maybe is trying to eat healthier and the spouse, for whatever reason, isn't. Um, I didn't think I ate unhealthy, but I grew up where it's like, have meat and vegetables and eat your food and don't complain about it, and I knew that I was supposed to have all the colors on what was then, like, the pyramid with the sections, not the plate and all of that. Um, and I had not struggled with weight or food any concerns with food, and so I think I could never really understand, and I would say this to whoever's listening to this part, you can't understand the thinking and the need and all of that that someone who is working through that goes through. So that was part of it. Asking you a ton of questions, trying to understand what weight loss looked like, what healthy food looked like, and how necessary it was that it wasn't just a preference. It wasn't just like, "Oh, I don't like gluten." Like you had to eat a certain way to remain healthy and to be in a good headspace. I hate that term headspace, but you know what I mean. Um, I do care, by the way, whoever said I don't care, or if I've ever said I don't care, I do care. I more cared that I wasn't overweight. And that is often still my concern. It was like, if my clothes fit and if I like how I look, then that's what I care about. But that also led me down a path of super high cholesterol and A1C. Is that the right? Okay. I don't even know what it's called. I just know that it got highlighted on my physical. I think, believe it or not, what you've seeing how you live and obviously how much you've helped people, I was like, oh, maybe there's something to this. And then having kids and wanting them to be healthy, I think put an even different, not pressure, an even different value on it for me. Would you say I care about nutrition?
I would say yes, you definitely I would say you definitely care about nutrition. You have less, I wouldn't say less restrictive rules than I do, but I would say you have far more flexible boundaries than I do. I do think that you care. How do you get a spouse on board? And how do you get a spouse to support what you are doing? You don't get a spouse on board, first of all. Like, the spouse is either on board or not. Now, we could sit here and talk about I am assuming there has been this prior to that, but we could sit here and talk about having a conversation about how your goals are important to you and what you're trying to do and all of this, that, and the other. I'm assuming that that has happened at some point in this journey, but if not, that would be step one. Other than that, like, you don't get the spouse on board. You are not going to force someone else to be healthier. You're not going to be able to force someone else to want to do what you are doing.
When I even asked you, like, specifically, "Is this good or bad, and what should I do differently?" And I mean, even still, it takes a lot of coaxing to get you to say, "Well, maybe if you wanted to choose one thing you wanted to rel." That's after I'm, like, insisting that you tell me. You told me that one of the first things I ever told you in dietetic school was, "Whatever you do, do not become your family's dietitian." Granted, you are a dietitian, but as clients learn more about food and learn accurate information, you naturally wanna share that, you want to involve someone else, they feel better, so they want their spouse or their kids to feel better, but I think it can you can share that it's important to you, and if you're the cook, you can obviously cook well, but they they don't have the same conviction. I don't know if conviction's the right word, it's kinda spiritual, but they don't have that same conviction. Knowing it was important to you, I thought, "Okay, it's gonna be important to me because it's important to Kyle."
What I would say is this: as the person who's like embarking on this, you're not going to be able to convert someone or bring them on board to do what you are doing. I think it's okay to ask them to support what you are doing in the sense of, talk to them about what your goals are, talk to them about modifications that you may be trying to make. I think that it is okay to have that conversation. Like, hey, can we maybe not bring moose tracks in the house for a couple weeks? Because I tend to throw down on it and like I'm trying to change a couple of things. I think that's a fair request. I probably am not going to the extent, though, of definitely not going to the extent of trying to ask them to do what I'm doing in an effort to support me. This is your choice, and you get to decide whether or not you want to embark on it. Number two is I would challenge yourself to eat the family meals, right? Like, to not even necessarily modify and eat something different unless it's just like a taste preference thing, but to eat what the family meals are. I mean, one of the things that we work really, really, really hard on with people is helping them develop an understanding of what nutrition is. And that is so when they find themselves in any position that they know how to still be on track with their goals. They're not having to not eat, they're not having to modify it, they're not having to, to do any of that. It's so that they understand how to navigate that situation and still be on track with their nutrition goals. So if you have that understanding, whatever is made at dinner, you shouldn't need to ask for some big modification to it. And you certainly can't expect someone else or other people to do what you are doing just to help you more, I don't think.
I feel like it's a little bit more on the other side of it, and I don't know, maybe we spoke to these things in previous episodes, but I just think it's just a can be a tense subject that you hope doesn't, you know, cause even more tension or separation. I think the best things we've done is continue over the years, really the years we've been married to talk about this. I remember the first time it ever got tense when we were dating, and I was like, I just want you to be able to come to dinner and not eat weird. Like, I wanna be able to say we can go to dinner with somebody and not worry about you, and you one of the things that really hit home for me that really helped a lot is you said, "If I" and this wasn't just about good nutrition, this had been, I mean, after significant weight loss. You said, "If I was an alcoholic, you would never insist that I go to a bar. If I was trying to quit smoking, you would never smoke around me. So why is it the fact that I had this problem with food that everyone is so insistent that I don't eat a certain way?" And that, I mean, you weren't being mean to me. That was so eye-opening to realize this was a much deeper thing than just, "I don't like that food, and I don't eat that." I think too, there's so much emotion and, like, I guess, socialization wrapped up in food. Like, we would be like, "Oh, let's go get a milkshake. Let's go for a drive and get a milkshake." And we'd go down there, and you'd say, "What kind do you want?" I would tell you, I was like, "What kind are you gonna get?" Like, "Oh, I'm not gonna get one." "What screws up my whole plan?" And it was so personal to me and so emotional because I always pictured us, like, doing all these things together, and that is just now I first of all, I don't get as many milkshakes. Second of all, I had to let go that you were gonna get a milkshake, and that's okay. Um, just I don't know, I think letting go of expectations on both sides has been really helpful, and realizing that just because that person is making these choices, whether it's the footloose, fancy-free overeater, meaning myself, or whether it's someone that seems really stringent and has to be really particular, like, it's not about you. It's about them, and they want to eat that way or, um, you know, go about things that way, so I think that was helpful, just letting it go, honestly.
I think that that's it. I think that's a great point, and a great point to end on is I would say, not that this is like a marriage podcast, but I would say that that is one thing that we have both found to be true across the board is like the more that you give the other person the ability to just be themselves and still support and love them no matter what, the better it tends to go rather than trying to morph them into something you want them to be or whatever. And that's very true here too. So, yeah, hopefully that helps answer the question. Thank you for writing in. Thanks for sending all of your questions in. We've definitely got more that we will keep covering. Thanks for your patience as we've gone through them. We appreciate you guys listening. And if you have any questions, you can send them to us at info@v2pnutrition.com. Back again in a couple weeks with another new episode. Have a great week, everyone.